The last human colony ship drifted through the void like a dying whale, its hull scarred by countless impacts from the Vorthak swarm. Captain Elena Rodriguez stood on the bridge, watching the tactical display paint an increasingly hopeless picture. Red dots swarmed around their position, millions of them, each representing a Vorthak hunter-killer that wanted nothing more than to crack open their ship and feast on the crew inside. "Ma'am, we've lost contact with New Terra Colony," Communications Officer Park reported, his voice barely steady. "That makes it official. We're the last ones left." Elena closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of every soul aboard her ship. 50,000 humans, the final remnants of a species that once dreamed of conquering the stars. Instead, they'd stumbled into a galaxy already claimed by something far worse than they'd ever imagined. The Vorthak had appeared 18 months ago, emerging from the dark space between galaxies like a plague of living starships. They didn't want territory or resources. They wanted to devour every thinking being they encountered. Entire civilizations had fallen in weeks. The proud Zalani Empire, with their planet-crushing fleets, had lasted exactly 9 days. The ancient Keeper Collective, beings of pure energy who had existed for millions of years, were consumed in a matter of hours. Humanity had survived this long only because they were scattered across the rim of the galaxy, too insignificant for the Vorthak to notice at first, but now their luck had run out. "Engineering reports we've got maybe 6 hours of power left," Chief Engineer Yamamoto's voice crackled over the intercom. "The quantum cores are failing faster than we can repair them. And even if we could fix them, we're down to our last food synthesizer." Elena stared at the swarm closing in around them. The Vorthak moved with terrible purpose, their ships pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that seemed to mock the small human vessel trapped in their midst. Each ship was the size of a city block, grown rather than built, covered in chitinous armor that could shrug off nuclear weapons. "There has to be something," she muttered, pulling up every database entry on galactic civilizations. "Someone must have fought these things before." Lieutenant Torres looked up from his station. "Ma'am, what about the forbidden sectors?" "The areas marked as extreme hazard on all the galactic charts?" Elena paused. Every spacefaring civilization had warned them about those regions. Vast areas of space that were marked with warning beacons in every known language. "Enter at your own risk, most likely death." The galactic community had maintained these warnings for thousands of years, but no one Elena had met could explain exactly what was so dangerous about those regions. "What are you thinking, Torres?" "Well, ma'am, if the Vorthak are as unstoppable as they seem, why haven't they touched those areas? Look at the tactical display. They're flowing around the forbidden sectors like water around rocks." Elena pulled up the galactic map and felt her breath catch. Torres was right. The Vorthak swarm had consumed everything in their path, but they formed perfect curves around 7 distinct regions of space. Whatever lived in those areas, even the Vorthak were afraid of it. "Ma'am," Park called out urgently, "I'm detecting massive energy signatures closing in on our position. The Vorthak are preparing for a final assault." Through the viewports, Elena could see the alien ships moving into attack formation. Their hulls began to glow with that sickly green light that preceded their feeding frenzy. In minutes, her ship would be nothing but debris and her people would be absorbed into the collective nightmare that was the Vorthak swarm. "Set course for the nearest forbidden sector," she ordered. The bridge fell silent. Chief Navigation Officer Chen slowly turned to face her. "Ma'am, with respect, that's suicide. We don't know what's in there." "We know what's out here," Elena replied grimly, "and it's definitely going to kill us. At least in there we might have a chance." "Ma'am, the nearest forbidden sector is the Abyss of Screams," Torres reported. "The warning beacons around it are in 17 different languages, all saying the same thing. Turn back now. Death awaits. Ancient devils sleep here." Elena looked around her bridge crew. These people had followed her through impossible odds, trusted her judgment when everything seemed hopeless. Now she was asking them to fly into what might be the most dangerous place in the galaxy. "I won't lie to you," she said. "We're probably going to die either way. But if we go into that sector, we might learn something that could help other humans somewhere. Maybe there are colonies we don't know about. Maybe Earth managed to rebuild. If there's even a small chance that what we find in there could help our species survive, isn't that worth the risk?" The crew exchanged glances. These weren't trained soldiers, they were civilians, scientists, engineers, teachers. People who had signed up for exploration and discovery, not war. But the look in their eyes told Elena everything she needed to know. Plot the course, Chen said quietly. As their ship turned toward the forbidden sector, the Vorthak swarm seemed to sense their intention. The alien ships stopped their advance, hovering at the edge of the warning zone. Their bioluminescent patterns shifted to something that almost looked like concern. "They're not following us," Park observed with wonder. "No," Elena said, watching the creatures that had terrorized the galaxy maintain their distance. "They're not. Whatever's in there scares them more than we do." The human ship crossed the boundary marked by ancient warning beacons. Behind them, the Vorthak swarm waited, as if expecting them to turn back. Ahead lay the abyss of screams, a region of space that had been forbidden to travelers for longer than recorded history. Elena gripped her captain's chair as they plunged into the unknown. Whatever lived in this dark corner of the galaxy, humanity was about to meet it face to face, and perhaps in their desperation, they would discover that sometimes the most dangerous beings in the universe were exactly what you needed to survive. The moment their ship crossed into the abyss of screams, every instrument on the bridge began behaving erratically. The star charts flickered between different configurations, as if the computer couldn't decide which version of reality was correct. The gravity generator hummed with an odd harmonic that made everyone's teeth ache. "What's our status?" Elena asked, though she could already see the answer on her crew's faces. "Sensors are reading impossible data," Torres reported, his voice tight with confusion. "According to the long-range scanners, there are 17 different types of spacetime in this region. Some areas show time flowing backwards, others show no time at all." Dr. Sarah Kim, the ship's xenobiologist, looked up from her readings with wide eyes. "Captain, I'm detecting life signs. Massive ones. But they don't match any known biological patterns. Some of them register as being larger than entire star systems." Elena felt a chill run down her spine. "Larger than star systems? That's impossible." "Ma'am." Engineering Chief Yamamoto's voice came through the comm, unusually shaky. "You need to see this. I'm in the main engineering bay looking out the observation port. There's something out there." Elena rushed to the nearest viewport, her senior staff following close behind. What she saw made her mind struggle to process the information. Floating in the void, apparently unaffected by the lack of atmosphere, was a structure that defied all logic. It looked like a city, but one built by beings who had never heard of physics. Towers twisted through space in impossible spirals, their surfaces covered in what looked like eyes that tracked the movement of their ship. Bridges connected floating platforms that orbited around each other in patterns that hurt to watch. And throughout it all, a faint sound penetrated the ship's hull, a low, thrumming noise that sounded almost like singing. "Are those buildings?" Communications Officer Park whispered. "No," Dr. Kim said, studying her readings. "Those are alive. Everything we're seeing is alive. The city, the towers, even the empty space between them. It's all one massive organism." As if responding to her words, several of the tower structures began to turn toward their ship. The eye-like patterns on their surfaces blinked in unison, and the singing grew louder. Elena realized with growing horror that the sound wasn't coming through their speakers. It was somehow bypassing their ship's hull entirely and resonating directly in their minds. "Captain," Torres called out urgently, "we're receiving a transmission, but it's not coming through any of our communication arrays. It's appearing directly on our screens." The main view screen flickered and showed an image that made several crew members step backward in alarm. It was a face, but not one that belonged to any species they'd encountered. The being had features that seemed to shift and change as they watched, sometimes appearing almost human, other times becoming something that belonged in nightmares. When it spoke, the words formed in their minds rather than their ears. "Small ship thoughts have entered the realm of those who sleep between stars. This is unexpected. For countless rotations of the Great Wheel, no lesser mind has dared cross the boundary pane." Elena stepped forward, drawing on every ounce of command training she'd ever received. "I am Captain Elena Rodriguez of the human vessel Endurance. We've entered your territory seeking refuge from an enemy that threatens to destroy our entire species." The being's face tilted in a gesture that might have been curiosity. Around their ship, more structures began to shift and move, creating a vast amphitheater of living architecture with their vessel at the center. Human. This word concept is unknown to those who sleep between stars. You are very small thoughts, very new made. Yet you carry something interesting. We don't understand, Elena replied, fighting to keep her voice steady as more entities began to manifest around them. Some appeared as geometric shapes that folded through dimensions their eyes couldn't follow. Others looked like storms made of solid light. All of them radiated a power that made the Vorthax seem like angry insects by comparison. Pain Song, the first being explained, and somehow Elena knew this was their name rather than a description. You carry the pain song of those who refuse to surrender die. This is a sound those who sleep between stars have not heard for many great turnings of the cosmic wheel. Dr. Kim stepped forward, her scientific curiosity overcoming her fear. Are you saying you can sense our emotions? Our determination to survive? Pain Song's features shifted into what might have been amusement. Small thought, Dr. Kim. You mistake the nature of what flows through you. It is not mere emotion vibration. It is something much older, much more dangerous. The view screen split to show images that took Elena's breath away. She saw human colonies fighting impossible odds against alien invaders, but refusing to surrender even when defeat was certain. She saw human explorers venturing into unknown dangers, driven by curiosity rather than profit. She saw human parents sacrificing everything for their children, human friends dying for each other, human scientists working to solve problems that might benefit species they'd never met. Throughout the galaxy, Pain Song continued, thinking beings develop along similar paths. They learned fear preservation. They learned power hunger. They learned dominance seeking. But some few, very few, develop something else, something that those who sleep between stars have learned to watch for, because it is both magnificent and terrifying. What is it? Elena asked, though part of her already suspected the answer. Hope defiance. The ability to say no to the universe itself when it declares that a thing cannot be done. Most species lose this quality as they mature. As they learn the practical limits of reality, they become wise and careful and safe. But humans, Pain Song's image smiled with too many teeth. Humans have kept this quality even as they reached for the stars. Even now, facing extinction, you refuse to simply accept death. Instead, you seek out the most dangerous beings in the galaxy and ask for help. Around them, the other entities began to communicate in harmonics that registered as colors rather than sounds. Elena caught fragments of the conversation. Unprecedented. The old patterns. Potential for chaos. Opportunity for change. You're not the first species to find us, Pain Song explained. Others have crossed into our realm when faced with extinction. The wise ones turn back when they see what we are. The foolish ones attack us and are unmade. But you look at those who sleep between stars and think, perhaps these terrible beings can help us fight an even more terrible enemy. Elena felt her heart pounding. Can you? Help us, I mean? Pain Song's laugh was like the sound of galaxies colliding. Small thought, Captain. You do not yet understand what you are asking. Those who sleep between stars are forbidden to the galaxy because we are change-bringers. Chaos weavers. We were exiled here not because we are evil, but because our very existence reshapes reality around us. To accept our help would transform your species in ways you cannot imagine. The Vorthak will kill everyone, Elena said simply. Every human child, every human dream, every human story will be consumed and forgotten. If your help means we change, at least we'll still exist to change. The singing around them grew louder, more complex. Elena realized that every entity in this impossible space was now focused on their small ship, discussing something in their reality-bending language. Finally, Pain Song spoke again. Those who sleep between stars will consider your plea, human captain. But first you must prove that your species truly possesses the hope defiance we sense. You must demonstrate that humans will not simply become tools of chaos, but partners in the reshaping of what is possible. The screen went dark, leaving the crew alone with their thoughts and the growing realization that they had just entered into negotiations with beings that existed outside the normal rules of the universe. Whatever happened next would determine not just their survival, but the very nature of what humanity would become. 3 hours passed in tense silence before the entities responded. During that time, the crew of the Endurance watched in fascination and terror as the living city around them continued to reshape itself. Corridors of light formed and dissolved like thought dreams, massive structures that looked like organs pumped with rhythms that seemed to echo the heartbeats of everyone aboard the ship. Dr. Kim had been running continuous scans, her excitement overcoming her fear. Captain, the energy readings are off any scale we understand. These beings don't just bend reality, They appear to be actively rewriting the fundamental laws of physics in this space. Elena nodded, though her attention was focused on something else. Chief Engineer Yamamoto had reported that their failing power systems had somehow stabilized the moment they entered this realm. Their food synthesizers were working at peak efficiency again. Even minor injuries among the crew were healing faster than normal. They're keeping us alive, she realized aloud. Even while they decide whether to help us, they're making sure we don't die while we wait. Lieutenant Torres looked up from his station. Ma'am, that might be more significant than we realize. According to the historical records, the Vorthak consumed dying civilizations' fear and despair. If these beings are preventing us from experiencing true desperation... Before Elena could respond, the view screen flickered back to life. This time, instead of Painsong's shifting features, they saw a vast space that looked like the inside of a crystal geode, with thousands of different entities floating in complex patterns around a central dais. Human ship thoughts, came a voice that seemed to speak from every direction at once. Those who sleep between stars have reached consensus. You will face the trial of impossible choices. This test has been given to 17 other species who sought our aid. 16 failed. 1 succeeded, but the cost transformed them so completely that they chose to leave this dimension entirely. Elena felt her mouth go dry. What does the trial involve? The space around them shifted, and suddenly the crew found themselves standing in what appeared to be a perfect replica of Earth's United Nations Assembly Hall. But instead of human delegates, the seats were filled with representatives from every species they'd ever encountered, and many they hadn't. You will be presented with 3 scenarios, the voice explained. Each represents a choice that your species must make if you are to survive not just the Vorthak, but the changes that come with our alliance. In each scenario, there is no objectively correct answer. There is only what you choose to value most. The first scenario materialized around them like a holographic nightmare. They saw the Vorthak swarm approaching a human colony world of 10 million people. But they also saw something else, a small research station on the planet's moon where human scientists had just discovered a cure for a plague that was killing children across 3 different alien species. Scenario 1, the voice announced. You have the power to save either the colony world or the research station, but not both. The colony represents the immediate survival of your people. The research station represents your species' commitment to helping others, even at great cost to yourselves. Choose. Elena looked around at her crew. Dr. Kim was staring at the holographic children dying of plague, tears streaming down her face. Engineer Yamamoto was calculating the odds of 10 million people versus the potential millions who could be saved by the cure. Torres was studying the tactical situation, trying to find a third option that didn't exist. There has to be another way, Elena said. There is not, the voice replied with cosmic finality. This is the nature of impossible choices. Reality constrains what can be saved. Will humans save their own, or will they sacrifice themselves for the greater good? Elena felt the weight of command like never before. Around the assembly hall, alien observers watched with expressions ranging from curiosity to pity. She realized that this wasn't just about their species' survival. It was about proving what kind of allies humans would make in a universe full of terrible decisions. We saved the research station, she said, firmly. The reaction was immediate. Half of her crew looked at her in shock, while the other half nodded in grim approval. In the holographic display, they watched 10 million humans die while the cure was transmitted to worlds they'd never seen, saving countless alien children. Explain your reasoning, the voice commanded. Because that's what humans do, Elena replied. We don't always make the smart choice or the safe choice. We make the choice that says something about who we want to be. 10 million of our people died, but they died because we chose to save millions of others. That's not just survival, that's creating a legacy worth surviving for. The second scenario began immediately. This time, they saw human colonies scattered across the galaxy, all under attack by the Vorthak. But overlaying the image was a map showing the locations of those who sleep between stars' ancient enemies, beings called the Order of Static Reality, who sought to freeze the universe in perfect, unchanging form. Scenario 2, the voice announced. To save your species from the Vorthak, we must grant you abilities that will make you appear as chaos bringers to the Order. They will hunt you across the galaxy, seeking to eliminate you before you can grow strong enough to threaten their vision of cosmic stability. Do you accept this burden knowing it will mean eternal war? This time, Communications Officer Park spoke up. How many other species would be affected if the Order succeeded in freezing reality? All of them. Evolution would cease. Growth would end. The universe would become a museum of what was rather than a garden of what could be. Elena saw her crew exchanging glances. They were exhausted people who had signed up for exploration, not cosmic war. But she also saw something else in their eyes, the same stubborn refusal to accept defeat that had brought them this far. "We accept," she said. "Humans have never been good at leaving well enough alone anyway. If the universe needs chaos bringers to keep growing, then we'll be the best chaos bringers we can be." The third scenario was the most personal. The view screen showed Elena herself, but older, standing on the bridge of a ship that looked like it had been grown rather than built. Around her stood crew members who were recognizably human, but had been changed in fundamental ways. Some had additional limbs that looked like living crystal. Others had eyes that showed the swirling patterns of galaxies. All of them radiated power that bent space-time around them. "Scenario 3, the voice said. "This is what your species will become if you accept our aid. You will be human, but you will also be something new, something that other species may fear or worship or try to destroy. Your children will be born with abilities that reshape reality. Your explorers will travel between dimensions. Your artist will paint with the fundamental forces of creation. Is this transformation acceptable to you?" Elena stared at her transformed future self, trying to imagine what it would be like to think with a mind that could perceive multiple dimensions simultaneously. The other Elena seemed to sense her observation and turned to look directly at her through the screen. When their eyes met, Elena felt a moment of perfect understanding. Her future self was still human in all the ways that mattered. She still protected her crew. She still made impossible choices. She still carried the burden of command. But she also carried something else, a joy in exploration and discovery that went beyond anything current humanity could imagine. "We accept the transformation," Elena said. "We've always been a species that changes. We went from caves to cities to starships. This is just the next step." The assembly hall faded around them, and they found themselves back on their ship's bridge. But something was different. The instruments were displaying information in ways they could suddenly understand, even though the readouts looked completely alien. The space around them felt less hostile and more like home. Pain Song appeared on their screen once more, but now Elena could see layers of meaning in their expression that had been invisible before. "Humans have passed the trial of impossible choices. But more importantly, you have shown those who sleep between stars something we had not expected to see again." "What's that?" Elena asked. "A species that chooses growth over safety, complexity over simplicity, and hope over wisdom. The alliance is accepted. But understand, human captain, you have just committed your species to a path that will reshape not just yourselves, but the entire galaxy. The war with the Vorthak is only the beginning." Elena looked around at her crew and saw the same mix of terror and excitement in their eyes that she felt in her own heart. They had sought help from the universe's most dangerous beings, and they had found it. But in the process, they had transformed humanity from refugees to revolutionaries. The real adventure was just beginning. The transformation began immediately after the alliance was sealed. Elena felt it first as a subtle shift in her perception. Suddenly, she could sense the emotional states of her crew members, like faint music playing at the edge of her consciousness. Dr. Kim's excitement registered as bright silver chimes, while Engineer Yamamoto's careful concern felt like the steady rhythm of distant drums. "Captain," Torres called out, his voice filled with wonder. "The navigation systems. I can see the safe paths through space-time. It's like someone drew a map directly in my mind." Around the bridge, the crew was discovering their new abilities with a mixture of awe and apprehension. Communications Officer Park found he could understand the emotional undertones of every transmission they received, even in alien languages. Chief Medical Officer Chen reported that she could sense injuries and illnesses at a cellular level, just by looking at someone. But the most dramatic change was in their ship itself. The Endurance was growing, its hull expanding and reshaping as living crystal formations merged with the metal bulkheads. New corridors opened up that led to spaces that shouldn't exist within the ship's original dimensions. The engines now pulsed with a rhythm that matched the heartbeats of the crew. "The ship is becoming part of us," Dr. Kim observed. running her hands along a wall that felt warm to the touch. Or we're becoming part of it. The boundary between biological and technological is dissolving. Painsong's voice echoed through their transformed vessel. The first lesson of chaos bringing is that rigid categories are illusions. Your ship was always more than metal and circuits, it was home, sanctuary, hope. Now it simply expresses that truth more clearly. Elena walked to the main view screen, where she could see the Vorthak swarm still waiting at the boundary of the abyss of screams. They hadn't moved in hours, as if they sensed that something fundamental had changed about the small human vessel they'd been pursuing. They're afraid, she realized. The Vorthak can sense that we're different now. Yes, Painsong confirmed. But they will overcome that fear. Their hunger is too great, and they know that if word of your transformation spreads, other species might seek out those who sleep between stars as well. They cannot allow hope to spread through the galaxy. As if summoned by their conversation, the Vorthak swarm began to move, but instead of their usual overwhelming charge, they approached cautiously, forming a wide perimeter around the boundary of the Forbidden Zone. Elena could see larger ships emerging from the swarm, command vessels she'd never seen before, covered in bioluminescent patterns that hurt to look at directly. They're bringing their heavy units, Torres reported. Ship classification unknown, but the energy signatures are... Captain, some of those vessels are registering as small moons. How many ships are we facing? Elena asked. Approximately 50 million, Torres replied, his new enhanced perception allowing him to process the staggering numbers without breaking down. They've called in reinforcements from across this spiral arm of the galaxy. Elena felt a moment of vertigo. Even with their new abilities, how could one ship, even a transformed ship, face such overwhelming odds? But then she noticed something strange in her enhanced awareness. Her crew wasn't showing fear or despair. Instead, she sensed something she could only describe as anticipation. They think they're going to win? She murmured, testing the feeling. Of course we are, Engineer Yamamoto said, looking up from a console that now responded to his thoughts rather than his touch. Look at what we've become. Look at what our ship has become. The Vorthak are still thinking in terms of mass and firepower. They don't understand that we're playing by different rules now. Dr. Kim had been studying the enemy formations through the transformed sensors. Captain, I think I understand what the Vorthak really are. They're not just predators, they're antibodies. The galaxy is a living system, and they exist to eliminate anything that grows too complex, too chaotic. They're trying to keep the universe stable by consuming anything that might change it, which makes us exactly what they were designed to destroy, Elena concluded. We're not just their enemy. We're their purpose. The first Vorthak probe ships crossed into the abyss of screams, their hulls immediately beginning to smoke and spark, as the chaotic energy of the realm interfered with their biomechanical systems. But they kept coming, driven by something beyond hunger, by an instinctive need to eliminate the threat that humanity now represented. All hands, prepare for combat, Elena announced. But remember, we're not the same species that fled from these creatures. We're something new. The probe ships opened fire with weapons that could crack planets, but the beams simply bent around the Endurance as Torres instinctively redirected them through dimensions the Vorthak couldn't perceive. Dr. Kim reached out with her enhanced senses and began unmaking the biomechanical components of the enemy ships at a molecular level, causing them to dissolve like sugar in water. This is incredible, Park whispered as he reached into the communication networks of the Vorthak fleet and began introducing cascade failures in their coordination systems. I can feel their confusion. They don't understand what's happening to them. But Elena could sense something else through her connection to Painsong and the other entities. Amusement. The ancient beings were watching the battle with the satisfaction of teachers whose students were finally understanding a difficult lesson. You're not fighting the Vorthak for us, she realized. You're teaching us how to fight them ourselves. The lesson of chaos bringing, Painsong confirmed. Those who sleep between stars do not grant power. We reveal the power that was always there. Humans have always been reality shapers. You simply did not know how to see it. The main Vorthak fleet began to advance, and Elena felt her transformed crew working together in ways that went beyond normal coordination. Their minds were connected now, not in a hive mind sense, but more like musicians in a perfectly synchronized orchestra. Each crew member's unique abilities harmonized with the others, creating effects that were far greater than the sum of their parts. Yamamoto reached into the quantum foam underlying spacetime and began creating gravity wells that pulled Vorthak ships off course. Chen extended her healing abilities in reverse, causing the biomechanical components of enemy vessels to develop aggressive cancers that spread through their fleets. Torres opened temporary wormholes that appeared inside enemy ships, allowing their own weapons fire to strike them from within. But the most remarkable change was in Elena herself. As captain, she found she could perceive the battle from multiple perspectives simultaneously, seeing through her crew's enhanced senses, understanding the strategic implications of every move, feeling the flow of probability and possibility that surrounded each decision. "Focus fire on the command vessels," she ordered, but the words came out in harmonics that carried tactical data directly to her crew's minds. "They're trying to adapt to our abilities. Don't let them learn." The battle lasted 3 hours, but to the transformed humans it felt both instantaneous and eternal. They existed in a state where they could process information at near light speed, while experiencing every moment with perfect clarity. When the last Vorthak ship either fled or was destroyed, the crew found themselves changed once again. They were no longer just enhanced humans. They had become something that could hold its own against the universe's most destructive force. But more importantly, they had learned to work together in ways that transcended individual ability. "The Vorthak will regroup," Painsong warned. "They will bring greater numbers, more powerful weapons. But they will also carry word of what happened here to the rest of their species. The war has truly begun." Elena looked around at her transformed crew and felt a surge of pride that resonated through their shared connection. They had faced the ultimate test and not just survived, they had triumphed. But she also knew that this was only the beginning of something much larger. "Then we'd better get ready," she said. "The galaxy is about to discover that humans don't give up. Ever." Word of the battle spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. Within days, emergency sessions were being held in every major galactic government, as species that had survived millions of years tried to comprehend what the humans had become. The footage from automated monitoring stations showed impossible things. A single ship defeating a Vorthak armada, weapons that bent reality itself, beings who moved through dimensions like walking through doorways. Elena stood in the transformed bridge of the Endurance, now barely recognizable as the ship they had entered the abyss with weeks ago. The vessel had grown to 3 times its original size, but somehow felt more intimate than before. Living crystal formations pulsed with soft light throughout the corridors, and the boundary between technology and biology had become completely meaningless. "Captain, we're receiving transmissions from across the galaxy," Park reported, his enhanced abilities allowing him to process thousands of communications simultaneously. "Most are fear-based. The Zelani Confederation is mobilizing their remaining fleets in case the human Chaos Bringers prove as dangerous as the Vorthak. The Keeper remnants are trying to quarantine entire star systems where humans might appear." Dr. Kim looked up from her analysis station, where she'd been studying the quantum echoes of their transformation. "There's something else, Captain. I'm detecting similar energy signatures from 17 different locations across the galaxy. Other human colonies are undergoing spontaneous transformation." Elena felt a thrill of hope mixed with concern. "The change is spreading?" "Not spreading," Painsong's voice resonated through the ship's living systems. "Awakening. The transformation you underwent was not imposed upon you, it was released. Other humans who carry sufficient hope defiance are beginning to manifest similar abilities naturally." The view screen showed a star map with pulsing points of light scattered throughout known space. Elena realized she was looking at a new kind of constellation, human colonies that were evolving beyond their original limitations. But she also noticed something troubling. "They're all in danger," she said. "Every colony that's transforming is also under attack by either the Vorthak or conventional galactic forces." Torres nodded grimly. "The transformation makes us powerful, but it also makes us visible. Every awakened human settlement is like a beacon announcing, 'Something dangerous is happening here.'" Elena made her decision instantly. "Then we need to reach them before they're destroyed. How many can we save?" "All of them," Engineer Yamamoto said with quiet confidence. "The ship is still growing, still learning. I think it wants to become something bigger than a single vessel." As if responding to his words, the Endurance began to reshape itself once again. New bays opened in the hull, designed not for cargo but for smaller craft. Construction areas materialized where crews could build additional ships using the same reality-shaping techniques they'd learned to use in combat. We're not just one ship anymore, Elena realized. We're becoming a fleet, a mobile city, a new kind of civilization. Their first rescue mission took them to the Tau Ceti system, where a human agricultural colony had begun manifesting plant growth abilities that turned entire continents into living networks of enhanced crops. But the transformation had also attracted the attention of the Merchant Guild, who saw the awakened humans as a threat to their control over food distribution. The Guild fleet was already in orbit when the Endurance arrived, preparing to sterilize the planet. Elena felt her enhanced awareness extend down to the surface, where she could sense 12,000 frightened humans who were just beginning to understand what they were becoming. Open a channel to the Guild flagship, she ordered. The alien commander who appeared on screen was a Keltan, his crystalline features rigid with bureaucratic determination. Human vessel, you will withdraw immediately. This system has been quarantined due to dangerous biological contamination. The only contamination here is your presence, Elena replied. Those are our people down there, and we're taking them home. Impossible. The awakened humans represent an unacceptable disruption to galactic stability. The Guild has authorization from 7 different governments to contain this threat. Elena felt her crew's anger flowing through their shared connection, but she also sensed something else, amusement from the entities who had transformed them. Painsong's voice whispered in her mind, "Show them what authority means to Chaos Bringers." What happened next would be analyzed by military historians for centuries. The Endurance didn't attack the Guild fleet in any conventional sense. Instead, Dr. Kim reached out with her molecular manipulation abilities and began rearranging the atomic structure of the enemy ship's hulls, turning their armor into something resembling decorative origami. Torres opened dimensional portals that transported the Guild crews to a luxury resort planet 3 star systems away, leaving their empty ships drifting in space. Consider this a warning, Elena broadcast to the remaining Guild vessels. Humans are under the protection of those who sleep between stars now. Anyone who threatens our people will discover that we have very creative definitions of appropriate response. The evacuation of Tau Ceti took 6 hours, but instead of simply rescuing the colonists, Elena made a different choice. Working with her transformed crew and the awakened humans on the surface, they began the process of moving the entire planet. It's possible, Yamamoto explained to the astonished colonists. Mass and energy are just suggestions at this level of reality manipulation. We can fold space around your world and carry it with us, the sight of a planet being carefully extracted from its solar system and incorporated into the growing structure that the Endurance was becoming sent shockwaves throughout the galaxy. Within hours, 3 different species filed formal complaints with the Galactic Council, claiming that the humans had violated fundamental laws of physics and should be stopped before they destabilized reality itself. But Elena was no longer concerned with galactic politics. Her transformed awareness could perceive the larger pattern now. Dozens of human colonies awakening to their new abilities. Hundreds of thousands of people discovering that they could reshape reality through will and hope and stubborn refusal to accept limitation. We're not just rescuing people, she told her senior staff during a planning session in what had once been the ship's conference room, but was now a crystalline chamber that existed in 7 dimensions simultaneously. We're building something entirely new, a civilization that doesn't accept the boundaries other species take for granted. Over the following weeks, the pattern repeated across the galaxy. The Endurance, now better described as a mobile city ship, carrying 2 planets and 17 asteroid habitats, would arrive at a system where humans were undergoing transformation. They would face opposition from established galactic powers who saw the awakened humans as a threat. And then Elena and her crew would demonstrate that conventional understanding of warfare was no longer applicable. At the Kepler 442 system, they faced a Vorthak splinter fleet and simply convinced the biomechanical ships that they were part of a larger organism, specifically, part of a digestive system that needed to process itself. The Vorthak ships obediently began dissolving themselves from the inside out. At Wolf 1061, a coalition battle group, tried to prevent them from rescuing a mining colony whose workers had developed the ability to communicate directly with rock and metal. Elena's response was to temporarily gift the coalition crews with the same awakened consciousness her people possessed. Most of them immediately defected and asked to join the growing human collective. "We're not winning through force," Dr. Kim observed during one of their strategy sessions. "We're winning through transformation. Every being we encounter has the potential for awakening. We're just helping them realize it." But Elena knew their success was creating a larger problem. The more humans they awakened, the more attention they attracted from forces far more dangerous than individual government fleets. The proof came when Painsong manifested on their bridge with an expression of genuine concern. "Human Captain, the Order of Static Reality has taken notice of your activities. They are moving to intervene directly." "How long do we have?" Elena asked. "They are assembling a reality enforcement fleet, ships designed to freeze local spacetime and prevent any form of change or growth. If they succeed in cornering your people, the transformation will not just be stopped, it will be reversed. Your entire species will be locked into its current state for eternity." Elena felt her crew's determination surge through their shared connection. They had come too far and saved too many people to be stopped now. But she also felt something else, excitement. The biggest challenge they had ever faced was approaching, and despite the enormous stakes, her transformed humans were eager to meet it. "How many awakened colonies have we gathered so far?" she asked. 47 worlds, 236 space habitats, and approximately 8 million transformed humans," Torres reported, "plus another 3 million who are beginning to show signs of awakening." Elena smiled, feeling the weight and wonder of what they had accomplished. From a single desperate ship fleeing certain death, they had grown into something that challenged the fundamental assumptions of galactic civilization. "Start making a stand," she said. "The Order wants to preserve the status quo. Let's show them what happens when humans decide the status quo isn't good enough." The Order of Static Reality announced their arrival by simply appearing in the space around Elena's fleet. One moment the transformed human civilization was alone in the deep void between galaxies, and the next they were surrounded by ships that seemed to drain color and life from the universe itself. Elena stood in the central command chamber of what had once been the Endurance but was now something that defied classification. The original ship formed the heart of a structure that incorporated 47 worlds, each one pulsing with awakened human consciousness. Gardens of living crystal connected planets to space habitats where children played in gravity fields that responded to their laughter. "Analysis complete," Dr. Kim reported, though her voice carried harmonics that conveyed data directly to Elena's enhanced awareness. "The Order ships exist in a state of temporal lock. They're not moving through time in the normal sense. They're carrying their own static moment with them wherever they go." Torres, now integrated with the navigation consciousness that guided their mobile civilization, added his observations. "I can't plot courses around them because they're occupying all possible positions simultaneously. It's like they exist in every potential location they might move to." Elena studied the Order fleet through senses that could perceive across multiple dimensions. The enemy vessels were geometric perfection, crystalline structures that hurt to look at because they contained no possibility for change or growth. Each ship radiated an aura that made reality itself feel brittle and fixed. 800 vessels, Engineer Yamamoto calculated, his consciousness now distributed throughout the mechanical systems of every human habitat. "But Captain, they're not just ships. Each one is a reality anchor. They're trying to freeze us in place, prevent any further transformation." Elena could feel it beginning, a subtle pressure that made every breath feel labored, every thought slower. Around her, the living walls of their command center were losing their responsiveness, their ability to adapt and grow. On the populated worlds within their fleet, she sensed millions of awakened humans feeling their new abilities dampening, becoming sluggish. They're winning just by being here, she realized. Their presence is making change impossible. Painsong materialized beside her, but even the ancient entity seemed diminished, their reality-bending nature constrained by the Order's influence. The Static Reality Fleet carries weapons that can lock entire star systems in permanent stasis. If they fully deploy their power, your species will be frozen at this exact moment for all eternity. "And you?" Elena asked. "What happens to those who sleep between stars?" We would be forced to retreat deeper into the spaces between realities. The Order cannot destroy us, but they can make this universe uninhabitable for beings like us. This may be the last time we can manifest in your realm. Elena felt her crew's determination flowing through their shared consciousness. But she also sensed something else: desperation. How could beings dedicated to change and growth fight enemies who existed outside the flow of time itself? The answer came from an unexpected source. Throughout their fleet, the children born since the Great Awakening began to sing. They were too young to understand the philosophical implications of what was happening, but their enhanced consciousness could perceive the static fields surrounding the Order ships. And in the way that only children could, they began to play with the unchanging spaces, treating them like puzzles to be solved. Elena, Communications Officer Park, called out urgently, "The children are doing something. They're finding gaps in the stasis effect." Elena extended her awareness toward the younger generation and felt her heart leap. The children weren't trying to fight the Order's reality-locking power. They were treating it like a game. Where the static fields were strongest, they would imagine small changes: a different color for a star, a slightly altered gravity field, a minor shift in the quantum foam. Each change was tiny, almost meaningless, but the cumulative effect was extraordinary. The Order's perfect stasis began to develop hairline cracks. "They're not powerful enough to resist the static fields," Dr. Kim observed with growing excitement. "But they're too innocent to understand that resistance is supposed to be impossible. They're just playing with reality like it's modeling clay." Elena made her decision. "All awakened humans follow the children's lead. Don't try to break the stasis, just play with it. Make small changes, tiny variations. Let your imagination run free." What followed was perhaps the most unusual battle in galactic history. 8 million awakened humans began engaging in acts of pure creativity within the locked reality fields of the Order's weapons. They painted new constellations in space, convinced asteroids to grow flowers, taught comets to sing opera. Each act was individually powerless against the Order's reality-anchoring technology. But creativity, Elena realized, was inherently multiplicative. One imagination sparked another, which inspired a third, which led to exponential growth in possibility. The static reality fields began to resonate with harmonic frequencies they were never designed to handle. The Order responded by intensifying their weapons, but this only made the situation more interesting to the human children, who treated the increased resistance like a more challenging game. They began collaborating across the entire fleet, their innocent consciousness networks finding solutions that experienced adults would have dismissed as impossible. Order vessels are beginning to show structural instabilities, Torres reported with amazement. The children are teaching the static reality to dance. The fundamental constants the Order depends on are becoming fluid. Elena watched as 9-year-old Maria Santos, daughter of a mining engineer from Kepler 442, casually convinced a section of space-time to turn purple and taste like strawberries. The Order ship maintaining that particular reality lock experienced what could only be described as a computational breakdown, its perfect crystalline structure developing organic curves that pulsed with confused bioluminescence. The Order didn't account for human creativity, Elena murmured, understanding flooding through her enhanced consciousness. They designed their weapons to suppress change, but they can't suppress imagination. And once imagination starts reshaping reality. The tipping point came when 5-year-old Tommy Chen decided that the Order's largest command vessel would look prettier if it had butterfly wings. His innocent desire, amplified through the awakened human network, became a quantum imperative that reality itself couldn't resist. The massive geometric ship suddenly sprouted gossamer wings that shimmered with impossible colors. The transformation cascaded through the Order fleet as reality remembered that it was supposed to be creative, not static. Within hours, the entire reality enforcement fleet had been transformed into something resembling a cosmic art installation. Ships that had once been perfect crystalline structures now bloomed with organic growth. Weapons designed to lock space-time in place had become gardens where new forms of matter spontaneously generated. But the most remarkable change was in the Order crews themselves. Elena could sense their consciousness awakening as the static fields that had preserved their rigid thinking for millions of years finally collapsed. They were remembering what it felt like to wonder, to dream, to imagine something different. We We had forgotten, came a transmission from what had been the Order's flagship, now a butterfly-winged vessel where crystalline beings were experiencing curiosity for the first time in eons. We had maintained perfection for so long that we forgot why perfection was valuable. Elena felt Painsong's amusement rippling through the transformed space around them. This is why those who sleep between stars chose humans as allies. Other species seek power or knowledge or security, but humans seek possibility itself. You remind the universe that it doesn't have to be what it has always been. The former Order commander appeared on Elena's view screen, their crystalline features now flowing with organic curves that shifted as they experienced new emotions. Human Captain, we request permission to learn. We have spent eternity preventing change, but now we wish to understand what change can create. Elena looked around at her transformed civilization. Millions of awakened humans living on dancing planets, children who painted with starlight, engineers who convinced machines to grow like plants. They had started as refugees fleeing extinction and had become the teachers of cosmic possibility. Permission granted, she said. But understand that learning means accepting uncertainty. Growth means giving up the safety of knowing exactly what comes next. We accept this risk, the former Order commander replied. We have seen what certainty without possibility creates. We would prefer chaos to that kind of death. As the transformed Order fleet joined their growing civilization, Elena felt the final pieces of a vast pattern clicking into place. The Vorthak, those who sleep between stars, the order of static reality. They were all part of a cosmic balance between order and chaos, stability and change. And humanity had somehow become the catalyst that allowed that balance to evolve into something entirely new. As that stretched into the infinite future, Elena smiled, feeling the vast potential of 11 million awakened consciousnesses joined in common purpose. Now we go home, she said. It's time to show the galaxy what the universe looks like when someone refuses to accept that things have to stay the way they've always been. 6 months later, Elena stood on an observation deck that existed in 17 dimensions simultaneously, watching as the First Galactic Congress of Transformed Civilizations opened its session. The meeting was being held in a space habitat that her awakened humans had grown specifically for the occasion, a structure that looked like a flower made of crystallized music, floating in the Lagrange point between two stars that had agreed to dance around each other in perfect harmony. The change had spread far beyond what anyone could have imagined. When Elena's fleet returned to the galaxy, they brought with them not just 11 million awakened humans and the transformed order of static reality, but a new understanding of what intelligence could become. Species that had remained static for millions of years suddenly discovered they could evolve. Civilizations that had accepted the limitations of physics found they could negotiate with reality itself. The Zelani delegation is requesting a demonstration of voluntary consciousness enhancement. Communications Officer Park reported, his abilities now expanded to facilitate translation between forms of awareness that didn't even use language. They want to understand how their crystalline matrices could become more flexible without losing their structural integrity. Elena nodded, watching through the habitat's living walls as representatives from across the galaxy arrived for the Congress. Some came in traditional starships, but others had adopted more creative forms of transportation. The Keeper Collective had learned to travel as pure information, manifesting physical forms only when they needed to interact with matter-based beings. The former Merchant Guild now moved their trade goods through probability streams, delivering items to customers before they knew they wanted them. Even the Vorthak had been transformed by the wave of change sweeping the galaxy. The massive biomechanical entities that had once consumed entire civilizations now served as reality gardeners, using their reality-reshaping hunger to cultivate new forms of life in the spaces between stars. Elena could see several of their planet-sized forms drifting near the Congress habitat, their bioluminescent patterns now spelling out poetry in languages that existed in pure mathematics. It's remarkable, Dr. Kim observed, her enhanced perception allowing her to analyze the quantum signatures of every species present. 6 months ago, most of these civilizations were locked into patterns they'd followed for millions of years. Now they're all experimenting with fundamental aspects of their existence. Elena smiled, remembering the terrified refugees they'd been when they first fled into the abyss of screams. Painsong was right. We didn't bring chaos to the galaxy. We reminded it that change was possible. The ancient entity materialized beside her, their form now stabilized into something resembling a tree made of living starlight. Those who sleep between stars had become active participants in galactic civilization, no longer exiled to the spaces between realities. Their reality-bending abilities were now used to help species explore new forms of existence, rather than simply to disrupt established order. The transformation continues to spread, Painsong reported with satisfaction. 17 previously unknown civilizations have emerged from hiding, revealing that they had been suppressing their own development out of fear of attracting the Vorthak. 3 entirely artificial intelligences have achieved organic consciousness, and the Andromedans have sent their first diplomatic mission in 2 million years. Elena felt a familiar surge of pride, but it was tempered by awareness of how much work remained. The galactic transformation hadn't been without its challenges. Some species had struggled with the sudden expansion of possibility, becoming paralyzed by infinite choice. Others had embraced change so enthusiastically that they'd temporarily lost cohesion as civilizations. "Are we ready for the main session?" she asked Torres, who now served as the coordinator between awakened human consciousness and the broader galactic community. "The representatives are gathering," he confirmed, though I should mention that the definition of representative has become rather fluid. The Keltan delegation includes 3 individuals who exist primarily as mathematical concepts, and the Spiral Union is being represented by a living song that spontaneously composes new verses as it experiences emotions. Elena made her way to the Central Congress Chamber, a spherical space where gravity worked in directions that corresponded to the emotional resonance of different topics. As she entered, she felt the familiar sensation of her consciousness, expanding to accommodate the enhanced awareness that her role as humanity's representative required. The chamber filled with beings that defied every traditional category of life. Some were physical entities that had learned to exist in multiple dimensions. Others were patterns of information that had achieved independent existence. A few were collective consciousnesses that manifested as geometric shapes capable of experiencing individual thoughts. "The session will now commence," announced the Congress AI, a hybrid intelligence created by merging human creativity with Keeper logic and Vorthak biomechanical processing power. First agenda item, the proposal to establish reality stabilization zones for species still adapting to rapid change. Elena listened as delegates discussed the practical challenges of managing a galaxy, where the fundamental laws of physics had become negotiable. Some systems needed carefully maintained stability, while their inhabitants slowly adapted to new possibilities. Others had embraced such radical transformation that they required isolation to prevent their experiments from affecting neighboring civilizations. "The human approach," spoke the representative from the reformed order of static reality, "has shown us that change and stability are not opposites but partners in a cosmic dance. We propose establishing learning sanctuaries, where species can explore transformation at their own pace." The debate that followed would have been impossible 6 months earlier. Civilizations that had spent eons as enemies now collaborated to solve problems that affected the entire galaxy. The Vorthak offered to use their reality-shaping abilities to create pocket dimensions where dangerous experiments could be conducted safely. The Keepers provided computational support for modeling the long-term consequences of various changes. The awakened humans served as bridges between different forms of consciousness, helping diverse species understand each other. "There's something else we need to discuss," Elena said when the formal agenda concluded. "The children." A ripple of anticipation moved through the assembly. The human children born since the Great Awakening had continued to develop abilities that surpassed even their transformed parents. They didn't just reshape reality. They seemed to dream new forms of reality into existence. Their play sessions had accidentally created 3 new types of mathematics and convinced an entire nebula to achieve sentience. "They represent the next stage of evolution," Dr. Kim explained to the assembly, "not just for humans but potentially for consciousness itself. They're developing abilities that we can barely comprehend, let alone control." "Should they be controlled?" asked the Vorthak delegate, their massive form pulsing with curious bioluminescence. "We attempted to control the growth of complexity for millions of years. The result was stagnation and death. Perhaps these young ones should be allowed to explore the furthest boundaries of possibility." Elena felt the weight of the decision. The awakened human children were indeed powerful beyond measure, but they were also still children, innocent, curious, and completely unaware of the cosmic implications of their abilities. They had already begun teaching other young beings from different species, creating multiracial playgroups where Zelani, crystal children learned to sing with keeper energy forms, while Keltan, mathematical prodigies, played games that involved reorganizing the periodic table. We establish protective guidelines, not restrictions, Elena decided. We create safe spaces for them to explore, with gentle guidance from adults who understand the broader implications. But we don't limit their growth. The universe has spent too long accepting boundaries. Let's see what happens when the next generation refuses to acknowledge that any boundaries exist at all. The Congress concluded with the signing of the Universal Transformation Accord, a document that established principles for managing change on a galactic scale, while preserving each species' right to determine their own path of development. But more importantly, it formally recognized humanity's role as catalysts and facilitators of cosmic evolution. As the delegates departed, Elena found herself alone on the observation deck with Painsong. The ancient entity had become not just an ally, but something approaching, a friend if friendship was possible between beings whose consciousness operated on such different scales. What do you see when you look into the future? Elena asked. Painsong's form shifted, becoming a kaleidoscope of possibility that showed glimpses of potential futures. I see a universe that has remembered how to dream, galaxies that paint themselves with new kinds of light,